What is up, everybody? Yes, for those of you that are wondering, this is still your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And this is a different setup because obviously I'm not on Spreaker, but I am in the flesh. Honestly, and it feels good to be in the flesh and speaking to you all through StreamYard. And we got a lot to talk about as the ACC and the Big 12 begin their season. I cannot believe it. Yes, it is Power 5 conference time. I am very excited. And we have some previews to show you all as Louisville and Notre Dame is going to have a big conference game in the ACC, as well as Texas and Oklahoma. Can the Longhorns take down the Sooners, or will the Sooners be stirring up an upset? All that and more here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you the Season 2, yes, the Season 2 premiere of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Welcome one, welcome all to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports, just making sure I get everything situated. This is my first time on StreamYard, and I hope I look good, because, again, this is my first time on StreamYard, and I'm a little bit of a rookie when it comes to this. So without any further delay, let's get on into the recap of all the NCAA volleyball matches. Now, if you're all looking at the NCAA volleyball site, it's not going to really work. However, with a little bit of my little magic, hold on, abracadabra, alakazam, we get this volleyball schedule that I was sent. So hopefully you all could see the volleyball schedule as we have the Big 12, which begins today. We have Baylor plays Kansas at Kansas. Texas plays at Oklahoma. Oklahoma plays Texas. Iowa State plays Kansas State. Texas Tech plays Virginia. TCU has a bye. Kansas plays Baylor. West Virginia has Texas Tech, and Kansas State has Iowa. And then you look at the SEC, which won't be playing until mid-October. You have Kentucky's schedule, Florida's schedule, which they have a bye the first week, Missouri's schedule, Texas A&M schedule, Georgia's schedule, South Carolina's schedule, Tennessee's schedule, LSU's schedule, Ole Miss's schedule, Alabama's schedule. Scrolling over to the right, we have Alabama's schedule, which is not letting me go further. So, but you get the point. You get the point of where everything is, and because we don't really care about Alabama. I mean, I'm not trying to say that in a mean way, but right here we have the first round byes, and then down here we have Pitt's schedule, we have Louisville schedule, we have Georgia Tech schedule, we have Florida State schedule, we have Notre Dame schedule. You get where I'm going at, and then here's the Sun Belt Conference. Sun Belt Conference has already played. They start conference play this week, and they've already played in some non-conference games, which is cool. And then we have the independent teams such as Stephen F. Austin, North Texas. I believe that's the Mean Green. We have UTEP, Central Arkansas, Houston Baptist, Missouri State, Mercer, Lamar, Citadel, Chattanooga, and maybe Army and Navy. So let's stop sharing the screen, and it looks like it worked because Larry said that's legit. And yeah, I definitely do need to thank Ed Strong of Twitter, aka NCAA Volleyball Scores, for for having that, for sending me that. It really helped me out because like I said, the NCAA volleyball site wasn't helping me out. I don't know if they've updated, but it is what it is. So anyway, let's get on into the first big primetime matchup of the weekend. We'll probably start off with the previews of the big time matchups. The first one comes from the ACC. So back to sharing our screen and showing you that we have, let's head to the ACC. Let's head down here. We have Louisville and playing Notre Dame at home starting on Friday the 25th and Saturday the 26th. So honestly, Louisville, let's take it from the top when it comes to this. Let's stop sharing the screen and let's take it from the top when it comes to both teams, such as we'll start with Louisville. So Louisville had a very successful season. They actually had one of the more impressive seasons that I honestly thought they were going to have, considering they finished second in the ACC behind Pitt. They went pretty far into the playoffs. One of their big upsets they pulled in the NCAA tournament last year was beating number 2 seed Texas at Texas in the Sweet 16. It was very impressive that they pulled off that big of an upset. I didn't think they were actually going to pull that big of an upset, and everyone knew they were for real, considering that, or it was that big. It was that big of a deal because when it comes to the NCAA tournament, anyone can beat anyone. So Louisville beat Texas in 5 in the round of 16 or the Sweet 16, and then in the Elite 8 they lost to Minnesota, which obviously sucks. But what can you do? Louisville, no one really had a whole lot of expectations for Louisville, considering Texas was probably expected to go to the Final Four, if not win the whole thing, and maybe get a Baylor versus Texas final, which is one of the reasons why I had Baylor. One of the reasons why Baylor and Texas could have made it to the NCAA final, which would have been a great Big 12 final, but Baylor didn't make it to the final. They lost in the semis, and Texas lost in the Sweet 16. And eventually Stanford won the whole thing because Stanford. But I will say this, Louisville looks promising. They have some really talented players. They returned their kill leader, their top 3 kill leaders from last year. They returned their setter and they returned their libero. I think this Louisville team could give Pitt problems. And he says, and Marcus says, you look like you're coming to us live from someone's basement. Nah, it's actually a room in my house. It was kind of difficult trying to find some decent lighting. So I was going to use my room, but it really didn't help. And I also got to give a shout out to Larry B. Says game time. And he says time for some volleyball. And that's my comment. And he says that's legit when it comes to when it came to me sharing my screen. So that's cool. Thanks for joining, Larry. Thank you for joining, Marcus, and thank you for joining, Walter. And yes, Adam, it is low ceiling, but again, it's a little test run. I was thinking about doing it in my room, but it would have been a little worse, honestly. So yeah, I will eventually need to get it ironed out. This is kind of like a little bit of a test run, but again, it's just to get my feet wet. Going forward, we're going to be better off. And hopefully you all could hear me well. If you all could hear me well, great. And Adam says I look great, and that's great to hear. Thank you for joining me, Mr. Adam Karnick. And Marcus Los Great, who says, you look like you're coming to us live from someone's basement. Well, that's kind of Marcus's little motto. It's his catchphrase. So honestly, but I appreciate you all tuning in. Thanks for joining me for Set Point today. So wrapping up on Louisville, I think Louisville has what it takes to challenge Pitt. They were one of the few teams that took Pitt to a 4th set, but they weren't one of the teams to take Pitt to a 5th set. So in all honesty, I think Louisville can challenge Pitt. Can they go deep into the NCAA tournament? That all depends on how the NCAA tournament is going to structure, which I'll be getting into in a little bit. So Yeah, so honestly, I think Louisville has a legit shot at winning the ACC. Pitt also returned some of their players, but I won't be talking about Pitt this week. Considering Pitt doesn't really have a big time opponent they play. They're playing freaking Syracuse, which I think they can handle. So the problem with Pitt is that I don't think they got a whole lot of competition. And even when they got good competition in the ACC, it didn't benefit them because they lost the round of 32 to the AAC champion Cincinnati, which Jordan Thompson just willed that team to victory. I believe she had 50 kills, which is one of the most that any player has had in the modern scoring era. So it's cool. All right, so now let's go to Notre Dame. Notre Dame last year had a successful season. They went 19-10 and they went 12-6 in the ACC. However, they lost in the first round to UCLA. Yes, they lost to a Power 5 school, and it wasn't really fun for them. And to me, I think Notre Dame suffered from having such a young team because they returned a majority of their starters, such as their kill leader, their setter, their libero. Well, they lost their libero to graduation. I think they lost one of their middles to graduation as well. But they do return quite the good amount of players, as Notre Dame looks somewhat promising, actually. I think Notre Dame has a shot to challenge Louisville and to challenge Pitt as well. I'm not saying they're going to beat Pitt, but I think they have a better chance than last year because losing in the first round really is disappointing. And I think they definitely could have had a deeper run in the playoffs in the NCAA tournament last year, but they ran into a hot UCLA team. That UCLA team, I remember, I want to say they got like somewhere near the top 3, top 4 in the NCAA or in the Pac-12 last year. But UCLA had such an amazing array of talent, such as like Mac May, Savvy Simo, Emily Ryan, a lot of talented players on that UCLA team. And I witnessed them firsthand when they beat Long Beach State last year. So, yeah, and Adam Karnick, I'm sorry, Adam, says, new guy question. What position is the most key to return onto the court? That's a very good question, actually. So when it comes to volleyball, the setter is kind of like the quarterback of the team, considering the setter is the one that is like setting the ball, making the perfect sets. Because to me, I think setter is the most difficult position to master in volleyball. I think that because you make one little mistake and it's a violation and it's a free point for the other team. So setter is one of the key positions. Outside hitter is the player that can jump the highest and is tall and that can pretty much play on the outside, which is pretty much the left side. The player can also play on the right side as well. The right side hitter or opposite hitter plays on the right side, hits from the right side of the net, or the team's right. The middle blocker is the tallest player, which hits from the middle, or one of the tallest players. But to answer Adam's question of what position is most key to return onto the court, I would say setter, considering if you're having a freshman setter, then they're gonna have to transition from playing high school volleyball to playing to college volleyball. And very few players, women's volleyball or men's volleyball, have mastered that. You look at Jenna Gray from Stanford, from her freshman year, like she wasn't even expected to start. I believe they were starting Kelsey Humphreys at setter, and then Jenna Gray at the time got thrust into the action, and then Kelsey Humphreys took a back seat and was the defensive specialist instead of the setter, which did not deter Kelsey Humphreys, which most players would have probably said, oh my God, I lost my starting position to a freshman, I quit. But Kelsey Humphreys really stuck it out. So that's kind of like your little lore fact of the day. And Stanford making that decision of getting Jenna Gray into the mix was really special, considering Stanford wound up winning the NCAA championship 3 out of 4 years. And they went to the Final Four in all 4 years of Jenna Gray's career. The only problem is that her sophomore year, Stanford lost to Florida in the semifinals, which really sucked because I think Stanford could have taken Nebraska, but It is what it is. And a big shout to Davidson. Big shout to Davidson Crooks saying, "What's up?" Thank you, Mr. Davidson. I think I need to show Mr. Davidson my screen, and I'm just going to briefly show Davidson my screen. And here is the SEC and all of its teams. I was sent this through Twitter through one of the Set Point followers. There's Kentucky, Florida, Missouri, Texas A&M, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama, Arkansas. You get the point. So, yeah, so I'm just going to I just wanted to briefly share my screen with Davidson. And, yeah, so because Davidson is a big SEC guy, and he is one of the hosts of the Lock and Crook Southern Sports Podcast, and he's also the host of Fast Break. So big shout to Davidson for tuning in the chat room. So back to Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame has some good key players that return. You look at their key players that make a return to their team. You have Charlie Niego, who is a junior outside hitter who returns for the team. She led the team in kills with 410. So that was big right there. You also have Caroline Muth, who is another outside hitter that returns for Notre Dame. You also have Sydney Bent, who is a junior right side. Then you have Lauren Wenzel. You have Zoe Nunez, the setter, returning. You have a returning libero in Kiara Schmidt, who's going to be a sophomore. So I think she learned on the fly when it came to being a defensive specialist. So all in all, this Notre Dame team on paper and in terms of returning players look very promising. However, can they put it all together, considering they're already jumping into enemy territory and they're jumping into a big conference game. So it's going to be tough for Notre Dame to mesh well, but I think they can do it. Then you look at Louisville's returning players. They return, what's her face? Iko Jones. I know I'm reading off of a little sheet, but Claire Chelsea, Anna Stevenson. Those are their top three kill players. They returned their senior setter, Tori Dilfer. They also returned their libero, Alexis Hamilton. That's something I didn't talk about. The libero is kind of like the fullback, the free safety, the one that keeps the ball from touching the ground. And the libero can move anywhere on the court, and the libero is probably more times than not the smallest player on the team when it comes to volleyball. So that's another key player that can return, because libero is also a tough position. It's more of the times than not the most overlooked. It's kind of like the puncher or the kicker as well, considering it's overlooked because the libero isn't getting kills, but it also can be looked at as a position where players can actually keep the ball in play defensively. And that's what really makes the libero position special, because defensively, it's a really good defense is kind of what wins championships, obviously. But in volleyball, being able to keep that ball from hitting the ground is key as well. So I think in terms of libero-wise, Notre Dame's going to be young in that, while Louisville's going to be better in that. Offensively, I think Notre Dame looks pretty solid offensively. It's just going to take a little growing pains, considering all the returners from last year get it to go to Louisville. And keep in mind, this is a 2-game set. It's like a 2-game series. It's like a 2-game series in baseball. Like you go to the opposing team. Like if you're on the road, you're going to be playing opponents twice. Like for example, Notre Dame plays Louisville on Friday, then on Saturday. So they're going to be staying in Louisville for over the weekend until like maybe Sunday, where they have to fly back. So that's just me right there. So just a little like little what's happening with this whole NCAA women's volleyball season 101. So yeah, that's just my little spiel. But again, it's just food for thought. So Adam says, libero, it's the O-line. When things are going well, you don't want to talk about them, but you notice when it's a weakness. I guess you could put it that way, considering it is one of the more overlooked positions, just like the offensive line, because the offensive line in football, they're blocking the defensive backs and protecting the quarterback, while the libero is making sure the ball doesn't touch the floor and giving the other opponent a point, because points can go a long way. So yeah, that's kind of like that's a good point to that's a good point on Adam's part to describe the libero as the O-line, but it's kind of like defensive line. It also could be described as a defensive back or anything of that sort. So yeah, that's just my little thing as well, but that's a good little comparison by Adam. I'm glad you're reaching out to me with these questions, Adam. Obviously, volleyball isn't everyone. No one's not going to really know volleyball off the top of their head like me, but it is what it is. So, yeah. So back to Notre Dame and Louisville. So this matchup is a big-time matchup, considering these two teams are this is definitely these are the two teams that I think can challenge Pitt. I think Georgia Tech can also challenge Pitt as well, but I think that's kind of about it. So on paper, these two are practically evenly matched. However, I think for my prediction, I think Notre Dame beats Louisville in the first matchup on Friday in 4 sets. I think they win the first matchup in 4 sets. And then Louisville kind of looks back on film and they just say, what did we do wrong? Why were we so flat at home? Is this Notre Dame team good for real? So I think on Saturday, Louisville beats Notre Dame in 5 sets and they get their revenge and they split the matchups. I don't like predicting splits, but it's tough to really pick a clear-cut winner, considering these two teams are very talented. Like, I think these two teams are really balanced. They return a lot of players. They have a lot of upside to them. And I think they have potential to just maybe win their conference. It still remains to be seen, but I give them a good chance at winning both of those games. And Adam says, I don't know, I like watching it. Yeah, I want to say, Adam, I want to know which is your college team you like to root for? Is it like Illinois or not LMU, Loyola of Chicago, or like I kind of want to know, but so kind of want to know if you're still listening. But if anything, I hope that University of Illinois or the Fighting Illini play in the Big Ten, which announced that their football teams are going to be playing. But I'm going to get into that a little bit later. But I will say this. He says, lol, Olympics. Oh, when it comes to the Olympics. Okay, so yeah, he's talking about he loves watching volleyball when it comes to the Olympics. Well, yeah, that's another thing. I can't wait for 2021. Oh yeah. Set Point's for sure going to be going live when it comes to Olympic week. So, yeah. So back to Notre Dame and Louisville. Wrapping up, I think these two teams are talented. Like they're talented. They return a lot of good players. They're setting wise, they're in good shape. Offensively, Notre Dame kind of has the upper hand in that, and then defensively, when it comes to like blocking and digging, I think Louisville has the edge. So it's kind of a pros and cons thing. Like when it comes to offensive power, Notre Dame kind of has their number in that. When it comes to defense, Louisville has their number in that. They both return their setters, like I said. So yeah, I think the two just split their first series. So yeah, just my little spiel, and then I'm just pretty much gonna skim through the rest of the ACC matchups right here. going back to I'm enjoying sharing my screen. So Pitt plays Syracuse at Syracuse. I could see Pitt winning that. Pitt returns a majority of their players, and they have a lot to prove considering Pitt was a very talented team. They were the 6th seed, and then they lost in the round of 32 to Cincinnati, which was very disappointing. Georgia Tech last year won the NIVC tournament, which is basically like the NIT or the CIT. Basically, they won like a little consolation postseason tournament. They beat I think it was University of North Dakota or something like that. It wasn't North Dakota State. But Georgia Tech plays Miami. I know one of the players on Miami, talented player. She actually won a national championship, and her story is nice considering she actually tore her ACL her junior year of high school, and she managed to work her way back, and now she's hoping to be the freshman of the year in the ACC. And that player is Lauren Tarnoff, nice player, and I think I like her determination and her moxie. So anyway, I think Georgia Tech and Miami is also a good matchup, but I'd have to see what Miami can bring to the table because Georgia Tech is pretty good. Florida State has a bye. They don't start play until they play Clemson. Notre Dame, like I said, plays Louisville. North Carolina plays Syracuse. Boston College has a bye. Miami, Florida plays Georgia Tech. The University of Miami. Duke plays North Carolina State. I don't know why it's not letting me go further, but that's pretty much just the gist of it. So just gonna pop back here, and yeah, I think the ACC is going to be competitive. But regarding the whole NCAA thing, I think I mentioned this last week. The NCAA has moved the fall championships to April, like to May and April. They moved the selection day to April, and the whole NCAA women's volleyball tournament is going to be in April, late April, early May. Or something like that. And this kind of has me wondering if they're going to be moving the NCAA and Larry B says this is so annoying, or this is annoying. I hope Larry is referring to the NCAA moving the postseasons, and not to something else. But I think he is referring to the NCAA. But honestly, I will say this. I think if Larry is referring to the NCAA moving the NCAA fall championships to the spring, that I do agree. I do agree that is very annoying. And it's inconvenient because you have – I get that the women's volleyball tournament isn't going to be – intertwining with the NCAA men's and women's basketball tournament, but you kind of also have to wonder if it's going to be intertwining with the NCAA men's volleyball tournament. And then what if NCAA women's volleyball players that play beach have to make that big decision on if they're going to be playing beach or they're going to be playing indoor? Because it's highly doubtful they can do both unless the schedule works out for both of them. Or you also have the fact that if they're playing in the fall right now, they could be playing beach. But then if the NCAA fall championships is moving to the fall, or is moving to the spring, like if the NCAA women's volleyball tournament is moving to the spring, you kind of have to wonder what's going to happen with all of the teams in the fall that are playing. And Davidson says that seems like a long way off. Yeah, because you look at the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, the Sun Belt Conference, and all these independent schools. They're currently playing right now. What's going to happen to them in the winter, and what's going to happen to them in the spring? Are they just not going to play? Are they going to play non-conference games? Or are they just going to stay rusty? Because you kind of have to wonder. It is a little food for thought, as I've been saying. So it's a lot to inherit, but it's just something that seems to come to my mind. And then you also have to wonder about the teams that haven't played yet, because the Pac-12, the Big West Conference, the Big Ten, possibly maybe coming back, And then some of the other conferences like the Ivy League, the AAC, all these other conferences that postponed their fall sports or canceled all their fall sports in general, you kind of have to wonder how those teams are going to be coming into play. Like, are those teams going to be playing in the winter time and then playing all till the end of spring? Like, you just kind of have to wonder that. Like, it's just a lot of food for thought. And this just went through my mind when I first saw the news. It's like, how is this going to be happening? Like, how is everything going to work? Like, there's just a lot of holes. So, again, that's just my little spiel. Like, it's like if they hadn't canceled, but if they kept the NCAA women's volleyball tournament into December, that would not have been fair for the Big West, the Pac-12 and the Big Ten and all the other sports that canceled or postponed their fall sports season. And then you also have to wonder if again, you have to wonder if the players that play indoor and beach, the women's players that play indoor and beach, have to make that big split decision. And it's just an inconvenient. Like, no matter what happens, not a whole lot of people are going to be, there's not going to be a whole lot of winners. So, and then the thing about the NCAA tournament, I haven't even gotten to the NCAA tournament. The NCAA tournament is normally a 64 team tournament. They've now cut that down to a whopping 48 teams, meaning 32 are automatic qualifiers in terms of conferences. And then when it comes to 16, those are at-larges. So 16 teams have to vie for their own playoff spot, while 32 teams are guaranteed a spot in the postseason or the NCAA tournament. And it all depends on what conference is doing what. Like, the Sun Belt Conference has a Sun Belt Conference tournament. The SEC, the Big 12, and the ACC don't have conference tournament. The Pac-12 doesn't have a conference tournament. The Big West doesn't have a conference tournament. The Big 10 doesn't have a conference tournament. Not a whole lot of these, not one Power 5 conference has a conference tournament. I guess that's to, like, avoid injuries and just to avoid multiple games being played. But when it comes to this whole thing, it just kind of seems, it kind of would be more essential, especially since not a whole lot of these conferences are playing a whole lot of games. Because you look at the SEC, if you all heard me last week, Texas A&M has the lightest schedule of all of the SEC teams in my mind. Them and Florida. What happens if Kentucky, Florida, and Texas A&M all tie for first place? They don't play one another, and the fact that they could tie with one another, if they all go 8-0, which could be a possibility, what would be the guidelines for that? Would they have to go through number of sets won, number of points scored altogether? They can't do head-to-head matchups because Kentucky doesn't play Texas A&M. Texas A&M doesn't play Florida, and Florida doesn't even play Kentucky, which is a big problem because I don't know, because the SEC structured it like that. Because not everyone is going to be playing everyone. And it's, like I said, it's only 8 conference games in the SEC. Same goes for the ACC. Same goes for the Sun Belt Conference. The Big 12 gets away with a little bit. I think they have more games. I think they're the conference that has more games of the participating conferences. They have more conference games of more than that are being played than any conference as of right now. So I know that's a lot to take in, but I just got to reiterate that, considering there is a big hole in that. It's just a big, 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 big problem. So that's just my little spiel. It's just my food for thought, but I don't know. There's a lot of holes when it comes to this whole NCAA tournament thing. So I think on that note, we're actually going to be taking ourselves a quick little break just to gather myself and recollect everything. When I get back, I will be previewing the Texas-Oklahoma matchup, which is sure to be a great one in the Big 12. So you're listening to Set Point, or you're watching and listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And we are back with Set Point. That was a quick little commercial break. You can catch that show along with all the other amazing shows here on iSports Radio. So now we're back with segment 2, or matchup number 2, being Oklahoma and Texas. This match will be played at Oklahoma, and I'm going to share my screen just one more time, just because I love sharing my screen. I think that's going to be one of the things that you're all going to need to get used to. I think that's one of the things I've mastered when it comes to StreamYard. So here's Texas, it's at Oklahoma, and then here's Oklahoma, and then here's Texas, and then it's still at Oklahoma. So yeah. So anyway, back here, and yeah. When it comes to the Big 12, it's a two-horse race. Texas is always the front runner, but then a new challenger emerged as Baylor, led by Yasonia Presley, challenged Texas and tied for the conference championship. And they only lost one regular season game last year. And big shout out to Mr. Ben Suttereth that's joined us in the chat room on Facebook. He says, "Hey, Teran. Hey, great to see you, Ben." And great job to Ben yesterday. He had a great little show, the weekend wrap-up show, and he also had an NFL Reaction Monday, and it was great. So it was great to see you and your Mr. Suttereth, and it was really great to have you on. So anyway, back to the Big 12. So the Big 12 is pretty much a two-horse race. Texas is more times than not the front runner. But then Baylor came into the action, and now it's a two-horse race. Texas and Baylor last year tied for the Big 12 championship. However, Texas, like I said, had the most disappointing run in the NCAA tournament. They lost to Louisville in 5 sets in the round of 16. And the partial decline of the University of Texas, or Texas in general, was that they had to go 5 in the round of 32 to UC Santa Barbara. Now, UC Santa Barbara does not come from a Power 5 school. They come from the Big West Conference, which is not a Power 5 school, like I said. But that was kind of a little bit of the writing on the wall when it came to the University of Texas on the decline, which really was concerning because I thought Texas was better than that, but I guess they weren't, and they lost the round of 16, which was very disappointing. So Texas is on a mission to get back to the promised land that is the NCAA tournament, and to go deep in the NCAA tournament and win their NCAA championship for the first time since 2012 when they beat Oregon in the NCAA final. So the University of Texas does return quite a bit of players, according to my little stat leader from last year. According to the University of Texas, they return Logan Exelton, and they return was second in the team, who was second in kills last year with 347, behind last year's kill leader Michaela White, who had 392. They returned the super setter known as Jenna Gabriel, who has one of the more amazing dumps from a setter. Like, if you look up Jenna Gabriel dump kill, you will see what versus BYU. You will understand what I mean. Like, she is definitely instrumental in Texas's offense. Last year, she had a whopping 1,119 kills. So, honestly, she is definitely one of the best key returners for for Texas. I gotta stop saying University of Texas. Other key contributors are Skylar Fields, Breonna Butler, and that's it. That's all their return. Their players that they return in terms of kills. And Butler returns, and she was the block leader with 95. So I think this Texas team has some promise. I really think they have what it takes to win the NCAA tournament. I dedicated a little bit of a segment a couple weeks ago to them on why I think Texas and or Baylor can win the NCAA tournament this year. Granted, now they may have to deal with the Pac-12 and the Big Ten and the Big West and all these other conferences that postponed their women's volleyball season to next spring. But now this volleyball season could get interesting because I don't know what the NCAA is going to be doing when it comes to all the other volleyball teams that aren't playing. Like, they're thinning the horde when it comes to the NCAA tournament, which means fewer teams are going to be getting in. Which means every conference game is now precious, and some of these Power 5 schools might not even get into. Some of these schools that are in Power 5 conferences might not even get into the NCAA tournament. That's kind of the concerning thing. So it's just my little spiel, and it's just food for thought on my part, because like, you could be from the Pac-12, but now with this whole field of 48, you could miss the postseason. Like, you could have an impressive season, and then you could still miss the postseason. Now, I don't even know what the West Coast Conference is doing with, like, University of San Diego, BYU. Pepperdine was a good team last year that didn't make the postseason. I don't think a whole lot of teams I think only 2 teams from the West Coast Conference made the NCAA tournament. I know Santa Clara was in the NIVC, which was basically the equivalent of the NIT, as I just mentioned. But that was pretty much it. So that's just my little food for thought. And again, I really am interested to see what this the rest of the volleyball teams get to come back to place, as I'll be leaving for a short second. Sorry, y'all. Okay, so yeah, I'm back. So Texas, in a nutshell, returns a lot of their players, and I think are one of the more deep teams when it comes to the NCAA tournament. Do I think they can win the whole thing? Probably. Like, them and Baylor are the 2 front runners. Wisconsin, when they get back, is definitely one of the front runners. Stanford, when they get back, is also a good candidate to three-peat. Then you have other talented teams such as Penn State, Minnesota, Kentucky. Kentucky is somewhat good. Florida, they're kind of up there. Pitt, depends on how disciplined they are in the ACC. The list goes on and on. Again, we can't really judge the teams that haven't played yet, considering they aren't playing yet. So we still have to wait and see on what the NCAA wants to do with the other teams. So now let's go over to Oklahoma. When it comes to Oklahoma, they're a good team. Their only problem is they suffer from third place syndrome. They're a good team, But when it comes to this conference in particular, they're not good enough to place first or second. Like I said, the Big 12 is a 2-horse race between Baylor and Texas. Everyone else is third place and below. Last year, Oklahoma tied for third with, I believe it was Texas Tech, if I'm not mistaken. But all I know is that Oklahoma tied for it was either they tied for third or I'm thinking of Texas A&M. That I'm thinking of some other team. But either way, Oklahoma got third in the Big 12, which is not bad. You put Oklahoma in another conference, though, I think they can get like maybe second, maybe even first. It depends on which conference we're throwing them in. Like if you put them in the Big 12, the Big 10, they don't get first place. Put them in the Pac-12, they for sure don't get first place. Put them in the ACC, probably not first place, maybe close though. Put them in the SEC, probably not. Like put Oklahoma in a non-Power 5 conference, they're probably going to get first place. Unless they face like a perennial power like San Diego or BYU in the West Coast Conference, Hawaii in the Big West Conference. I think it was Colorado State from the Western State Conference, New Mexico from the WAC, and that's pretty much Larry B's stomping ground. So anyway, Oklahoma. As for Oklahoma, quick and dirty, they do return a good amount of their players. They return Sarah Sanders. They don't return their kill leader, Ashlyn Dunbar, who was the only player that cracked 300-plus kills for them, which is disappointing, but I think they'll survive. They have Paige Anderson they return, and they return Sarah Maras as well as Sarah Sanders. I believe they also return Brianna Kadiaku, and then they return, and then I want to say, and they do return their setter, Kylie McLaughlin, and a few other players as well. The problem with Oklahoma is that they're under a new head coach. And to me, I think if their coach did lead their team to their first NCAA postseason berth since 2014, but it's going to take Oklahoma a little while. Like Oklahoma is going to, especially in this whole little all-conference thing. Like to me, I think Oklahoma is going to struggle against Texas because although they are at home, I think they'll be competitive against Texas, but Texas is going to win both these matches. No doubt about it. Like, I just don't see it happening. Like, I don't think Oklahoma can win one of these matches. I'll at least give Oklahoma a set, especially in the second match. Maybe they go 5 with Texas, but Texas is just such a good team. Like Texas is just on another level. Like Oklahoma is right here. I don't know if you all could see my hand, but Oklahoma is right here, and then Texas and Baylor, you get where they're at. But yeah, to me, I think that Oklahoma is not quite there yet. I could see them maybe making the postseason, but it's just going to be tough as an at-large team, especially since there are only 16 at-larges, and like the team that doesn't get into the postseason, like the team that doesn't get the automatic qualifier is more than likely not going to make the postseason. So Texas definitely is I could see Texas winning this matchup. Like I just don't see how Texas doesn't win. Like unless Texas gets like the pregame jitters or first game jitters, I just don't see how they win. And then I just don't see how Oklahoma can challenge Baylor, because Baylor is a good team as well. Granted, Oklahoma isn't the world's worst team, but they're certainly not the world's best team. So overall, I think Texas wins both these matchups. The first one in 3 sets, the second one in 4 sets. So that's just me right there, but I think Texas is just on another level. So I hate to say it, I don't like being that way to Oklahoma, and I don't like seeing a conference being dominated by one or two teams. I like to see a third team put their name in the box and say, "Hey, we're here too." Kind of like how with Wisconsin did, because Wisconsin last year in the Big Ten, they had themselves a really good year. I don't think anyone gave them a good chance at winning the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten boiled down to either them, Penn State, and maybe Minnesota. Nebraska wasn't going to win it because they lost a lot of their players and they had 0 seniors. They do return their whole team, so I think the Big Ten is going to look very competitive once their season gets underway. But for now, that's not going to be the case. So I'm just going to show you my screen one more. I know I keep saying that, but I'm going to show you my screen again just to see the other Big 12 matchups. We have Baylor in Kansas at Kansas. Baylor's going to win that quick and easy. Iowa State at Kansas State. Yeah, I can see Iowa State winning that one. Texas Tech at West Virginia. That's quite the inviting. I say they split, but overall, other than Texas, Oklahoma, there's not too many noteworthy matchups. I guess Iowa State is a noteworthy matchup, but Texas and Oklahoma are the headliners. As there's a reason why, there's a big reason why Texas and Oklahoma are being played on ESPNU, and in Baylor and Kansas and all the other Big 12 teams don't get put on ESPNU, and I guess Kansas State and Iowa State are on E+ as well as West Virginia and Texas Tech, but that's about it. That's that's just my little spiel. As sorry if you saw my big old face, but yeah, that's it for the Big 12 right there. Just gonna take one more little quick commercial break, and when we get back, I'm gonna recap all of the last weekend's matchups, and then I'll probably get to some volleyball commitment news that I didn't get to last week because I was up against time, and we'll get a little bit of a preview for next week. So you're just listening to Set Point live on StreamYard here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And we are back with Set Point. This is going to be the final little segment as we're going to go to the share screen. Just going to stop the camera as we're going to switch it up to... Yes, here we go. So we're going to recap. Now let's recap all of the last week's matchups and then get into some commitment news, and then I'm going to send you all on your way because in about a half hour we're going to be getting a man who's going to give you what you want, a man who's going to give you what you need. Yeah, man. And that's my boy Mr. Marcus Los Great, who's going to be going live with gloves off. And it's going to be it's going to be quite amazing. So bear with me on this one. I accidentally went a little too far, as we had some teams from the ACC playing last week. We had Virginia Tech and Virginia beating the Citadel in 3. Yeah. It's not really much to ride home about. Just because I don't mean to say this in a negative way, and I don't like saying this about teams, but the Citadel is just not a good team. They're just not the greatest team in the world. Like, I'm sorry, but it's the truth. Like, no disrespect to them. But the Citadel against a Power 5 school isn't really like any challenge. So that's just my little spiel right there. And then last weekend we had Texas State bouncing back from their upset loss and beating UTEP in. Let me just get my little mug back here. Hey everybody. So anyway, I am back, y'all, and gonna be heading back to the NCAA volleyball schedule. So Texas State bounced back from their upset loss to UTEP and beat Houston Baptist both times. I knew they would win. I knew Texas State would win just because losing to UTEP is a kick to the face. And Houston Baptist isn't really the best school out there. Again, no offense to them, but they're just not the greatest team. So, I accidentally clicked on something. So, Houston Baptist isn't really the best school out there, and Texas State was able to beat them as they are 5-1. I really like how my friend Ed Strong, aka NCAA Volleyball Scores, did this. Like he has the team, which is like these parentheses have them in a ranking that we're going to be getting into a little bit later. And then he has the team right here, and then their overall record right here. So this is really cool that he did. So then you have Coastal Carolina, who hasn't played yet. They won't be playing until the beginning of October. We have Troy, which kicks off Sun Belt Conference play this weekend. And I never even got to you all about the Sun Belt Conference. The Sun Belt Conference is a 3-game series. It's a doubleheader on Friday, and then they have a game on Saturday. I don't get that. I guess it kind of beats having Sunday games, just because Sunday, you never know with some of these players and having religions. I won't get too deep into that. But I don't know, man. Like, I really don't know. So I don't know why they have a 3-game. I mean, I get the creativity. Don't get me wrong. But I just don't understand why they have a 3-game set. So, and I'm sorry if you all had to see one of my papers just blowing because the wind just kicked up. So, anyway, back to this whole spiel. We have Troy kicking off conference play this weekend against Georgia State. UT Arlington kicking off conference play against Arkansas State. South Alabama didn't play last week. They play Stephen F. Austin in a non-conference game. We have Arkansas State playing UT Arlington in a conference game. We have Louisiana. Now, Louisiana has been one of the big surprises. Louisiana beat Lamar last week. Now, Lamar is one of the more sadder and disappointing stories. Like, 1 weekend ago, like last weekend, not this past weekend, but last week, like against, I think it was against, let's go to the individual teams. Hold on, guys. So this weekend, not this week, not these 2 games, but these 3 games, like these 3 games, guys, everybody, guys, girls. For these 3 games, for this whole weekend, Lamar had out of 16 players, they had 17 dress up. Let me say that again. Lamar had 7 players out of 16 make the travel them to Stephen F. Austin to play in these 3 games. You're not going to be winning games with just 7 players out of a possible 16. In other words, over half of their team did not make the trip to them. I don't know if it was because they had COVID. I don't know if they opted out. I hope that's not the case, but I just don't understand. Like, I can't believe it. I just don't know what to say. Like, I have no words. So anyway, Louisiana, back to Louisiana. Louisiana is 6-0. I believe they are the only team undefeated that's played more than 1 game. They've only lost 1 set, and that was to Houston Baptist, which is cool. And then we have Georgia State, which barely beat Mercer in 5. I'm disappointed that they had to go 5 with Mercer. Just like I am disappointed that they had to go 5 with Chattanooga and they lost. And the worst part about Chattanooga is that Chattanooga only has one game on their schedule. Chattanooga has one game on their schedule. Georgia State, they don't get to play anymore. I have no words. I'm sorry, but I just don't have any words. And yes, Marcus. Marcus says I'm the master of the full screen. I appreciate you, Marcus. And yeah, that's kind of the one. It helps when I have teachers that use it for Zoom. So, yeah, I'm still learning how to use StreamYard though, but it looks like I've got it down for somewhat of the most part. So, whoopsies. So anyway, looking at the other Sun Belt Conference games, Little Rock lost to Missouri State on a Sunday game in 3 sets. That's not really ultimately surprising. UNL Monroe didn't play because they had a bye, and they played Texas State. We all know what's going to happen with them. Unfortunately for them, they're going to get taken to the shed. I hate to say that, and I don't like saying things about like that, but Texas State is a really good team. Like they're kind of like the Stanford of the Sun Belt Conference, in my opinion. But that's just that's just me though. Like that's just me. Yeah. And then you look at the individual teams. I scrolled too much, and now I'm not. I guess I'm not really the master, but I guess I could use my buttons right here. Stephen F. Austin is won 4 in a row. They won't get to play until they play South Alabama. UTEP doesn't have another game until they play North Texas, a.k.a. the Mean Green. I believe North Texas is the Mean Green. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then they also play Stephen F. Austin. Central Arkansas, I believe, Central Arkansas was the one that had, I think they had like positive COVID tests with some of their players or some people at the school. I'm not sure about the whole thing, but Central Arkansas had to cancel their trip because of, I believe it did have something to do with COVID, but I'm not sure. I don't think any of the players got COVID, but it might have been. I don't know the full whereabouts, yeah. Central Arkansas doesn't play for another few more weeks. Houston Baptist doesn't have another game until... No, that's it. Houston Baptist doesn't play the rest of the way, which is disappointing. Missouri State plays Central Arkansas in a few more weeks. Mercer plays the Citadel again. That's going to be fun right there. Lamar, I'm just wondering, it doesn't look like Lamar has any more games, but I guess that's cool. But that's cool, I guess. Citadel, like I said, they play Mercer. Chattanooga does not have any more games. I am disappointed. I am very disappointed at the fact that they won't have any games. And it looks like my lighting is starting to fail me. I hope this is a little better. Stinking lighting. But in case you're wondering, this is my first time using StreamYard, so I'm a little bit rusty. But just to kind of wrap up, when it comes to Louisiana, they're having a big year, and one of the reasons why is because of their new kill leader, Haley Wisnowski, who is the all-time kill leader in the rally scoring era with 1,072 and counting. So we definitely got to give the applause button to her. And now my screen just suddenly turned blue. Yeah, I'm definitely going to need to figure this out, or maybe just use StreamYard on my phone. But either way, that is Louisiana's all-time kill leader, when it comes to kills. So good on Haley Wisnowski. So good for her. And once again, I didn't show this to you all, and so when it comes to these so when it came to this guy sending me these rankings, he really did me a good solid, and he gave me his rankings. I'm not sure if he's affiliated with the NCAA, but here are the current rankings of the teams that are playing. We have Texas State at number 1, Stephen F. Austin at number 2, Louisiana at number 3. Now, given that Louisiana hasn't beaten anyone of noteworthiness, like you look at Louisiana, they beat Houston Baptist twice. They beat South Alabama twice. They beat Lamar twice. So Houston Baptist has a record of 1-5. Lamar has a record of 0-5. And South Alabama has a record of 0-2. Combine those teams' records together, Louisiana's opponents have a combined record of 1-12. So for all you raging Cajun fans out there saying, "Oh, Louisiana should be higher. This is ridiculous." No. Louisiana does not have any standout wins. When they beat Texas State, we can talk. But by the time that happens, we will see Baylor, we will see Texas in these new rankings. So back to the rankings. Number 4, we have UTEP. Now, for those of you wondering, why is UTEP ranked? UTEP's not that good, are they? Well, UTEP did beat Texas State, which is a huge deal. No one in their right minds had UTEP beating Texas State. And they even had to go 5. They even went 5 with Texas State the first time around. So overall, you got to give UTEP props. Like, there's no favoritism when it comes to UTEP. Like, no one's going to be picking UTEP to win. So anyway, we have Virginia and Virginia Tech at 5 and 6, South Alabama at 7, Missouri State at 8, Central Arkansas at 9, Houston Baptist at 10, Mercer at 11, Georgia State at 12, UNL Monroe at 13, Little Rock at 14, Chattanooga with their one little win of the season, and that's it at number 15. And then Lamar and Citadel bring up the rear at 16 and 17. So there's that right there. So looking at next week. So next week is a big week. I won't be having set point on the standard day being Tuesday because I have plans that day. However, next week is a huge week because in 8 more days is the 1-year anniversary of Set Point. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be, well, first, I sound like Shannon Sharp. First and foremost, I will not be going live with Set Point on next Tuesday. Instead, I will be going live on Set Point next probably Wednesday, if not earlier. So, yeah, I'm just fixing my laptop. So, yeah, I mean, and maybe I'll be doing StreamYard again. Maybe not. Like, I still need to figure out how I'm going to get a clear quality clear quality shot. Because unless I do look good, but I don't know. So maybe I'm just looking at it from my perspective, and you all are looking at me perfectly, and I'm just making too big of a deal of it. But anyway, next week is the 1-year anniversary of Set Point. So I don't know if I'll be having Set Point on August 30th, which was the first ever episode of Set Point, but I will reflect on how Set Point came to be. I mean, I already reflected on Set Point in my 50th episode special and in my season 1 premiere or season 1 finale. So I will say this, Set Point has really come a long way. Like, I remember when I first did Set Point, I didn't know what to really do. I was kind of a noob, and honestly, I don't know, Larry, I don't know if you're listening to this, I was stealing Larry's lines, because I was used to being a co-host, because before I did Set Point, I was the co-host of Bases Loaded and Defining Moment and 3 and Out College Edition. I didn't know what to do as an actual host, and I just didn't feel confident. Like, I didn't really feel confident in myself, and I didn't think And like I said in my 50th episode, I didn't think I was going to be cut enough to do a podcast. But as my boy Marcus Los Great said one time, a house isn't built in one day. And it really isn't. And I couldn't agree more with that, considering it really isn't. And sorry, I'm sweating a lot because it's kind of hot up here. But the fact that I pretty much progressively got better when it came to my podcasts, it really kept me going. Even when this whole pandemic started, like, I didn't know what I was going to do with this whole pandemic. And then I got the idea of bringing on guests because I was like, you know what? I have a lot of volleyball friends that are coaches and players. Why not invite them on as guests? And I had all kinds of guests, such as former volleyball players, current volleyball players, former coaches, current coaches. Well, I think I've had all my coaches are current. Even sports writers for like local newspapers, and the eventual sports editor of the past sports editor of the Daily 49er, which is the school newspaper that I am the assistant sports editor for. So, yeah, surprise, I am the assistant sports editor of my school newspaper. So, yeah, but going back to Set Point, I really could not thank everyone for supporting me, just because it really was tough to do a volleyball podcast, just because not a whole lot of people know a whole lot about volleyball. Like I said, when it comes to, like, if you were to give a sports survey to like the average person, like putting down, like if they put, like if you put the sport that you know most, and then there was like football, basketball, volleyball, and baseball. Football and basketball would probably be number 1 and number 2, maybe baseball and number 3, but volleyball would be dead last when it comes to knowing that type of sport. So it really is tough to do a volleyball podcast, especially since there's no professional volleyball, just volleyball overseas. But it really is an honor to like continue to do this volleyball podcast. And I hope to continue to do this volleyball podcast until the end of my time here with IE Sports Radio, because I definitely love doing Set Point. Like that's my thing right here. Like, I like doing Set Point. Like there used to be a couple times where I just want to stop doing Set Point, but I just told myself not to give up. And like Marcus said in the chat room, a house isn't built in a day, and he couldn't be more correct about that. So I'm glad to continue doing Set Point, and I'm glad we have a season 2. And I'm glad we have some volleyball, because I don't know what we were going to do. Like, I don't really know what I was going to do in terms of getting more guests on, because I think I've tapped out when it comes to bringing on guests. But who knows? Maybe I'll have more guests on in the future. But we have volleyball. But all that matters is that we have volleyball, and that we're going to continue to keep this thing rolling. And we'll see what happens in the winter and the spring, considering we don't know about the Pac-12 or the Big Ten or the Big West or the West Coast Conference or any of that stuff. So that's just my little thing right there. But I don't know. But what I'm trying to say is I couldn't have done it without everyone's help. And I also got to thank Larry for critiquing me. I know I'm not really the most perfect podcaster, and I'm certainly not the most perfect when it comes to StreamYard, but I couldn't appreciate your help more, man. Like, I don't know if you're still watching or listening, but I definitely appreciate your help. Definitely appreciate every one of my guests for appearing on Set Point. Definitely appreciate my whole IE Sports Radio family for supporting me and tuning into Set Point. I know it's tough tuning into a volleyball podcast because not everyone is knowledgeable about volleyball, but I really do appreciate you all tuning in, and especially for the dedicated ones like Marcus and Ben, even though he's not a part of the IE Sports Radio family. He's with BS3 Radio, but they're kind of like our brother station. But I think I've rambled along, but I will say this: Set Point has come a long way, and Set Point is going to continue to go as long as it needs to go. Like, heck, I even want to continue to get I want to continue to get 100 episodes, just because I think that would be really cool to have 100 episodes. Just because I see some of these shows like The Extra Mile on some of these shows on iSports Radio, like The Extra Mile, Unfiltered Truth, 3 and Out. Those shows have done 100 plus shows. I want to be one of those shows. I want Set Point to be one of those shows, and I want Set Point to be a household name, just so I could possibly get to grow the game of volleyball, and to get to have people say, this volleyball show, it's highly recommendable. And I'll keep doing what I can to possibly be the best volleyball podcast out there. So we'll see. But on that note, I think we're going to end it right here. Thank you all for tuning in, and I definitely do appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you to Marcus. Thank you to Ben. Thank you to Davidson. Thank you to Adam. And thank you to Larry for tuning in, and Walter. And thank you to everyone else that's probably listening on the replay. I know if I don't look good, it's probably because I'm using my laptop camera, but we'll get StreamYard figured out. But till then, I think we're about to end this. So it's time to drop the beat, because I am about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you, everyone, for tuning into Set Point. I definitely appreciate you all. Thank you to everyone that continues to support IE Sports Radio. Thank you to everyone that tuned in, whether it's live or on the replay. Now I'll be back next week for the 1-year anniversary of Set Point, whether that's going to be on Wednesday, whether that's going to be on Monday or Thursday or whenever. Set Point is going to continue to roll on. This is Teran Rodriguez for everyone here at IE Sports Radio. Have a great rest of the night, and I shall see you Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Good night, everybody. Peace and blessings.